Is if it's going to get started. Excuse me. All right. Good morning. Good morning. This is Dr. King coming at you from 800 Link. It is Tuesday morning, November 23rd. And today, picture of one. Give me just a second. We're going to talk about what a QR code is. It looks like that. You see that? That's a QR code. And so we're going to discuss what a QR code is and how can it help you with things you do in life. So a QR, that's the first question. What is QR? What does QR stand for? QR stands for Quick Response Code. And it is basically, y'all remember the little barcodes you see like on the back of food, um, Amazon packages, FedEx packages, they're barcodes. Well, a QR code is similar to that, but it's a dimensional barcode that was created in 1994 by a Japanese auto company called Denso Wave. It was just a more efficient, more quicker way to caught on. Somebody saw it and say, hey, this is a little efficient. This can work. So let's try and use it for other things. And so in order to read a QR code, just like a barcode, you have to have a QR reader. And back in the day, when QR codes first, when they first came about in 1994, very few people knew about them. So when I start saying back in the day, I'm really talking about like say 5, 10 years ago, when the regular public, the globe started realizing what QR codes can be used for and things of that nature. You used to have to download a QR code reader, like an app on your phone or something like that. Well, now on the phones you have, and let me pull it up on mine, on your cell phone in your camera. A lot of times now all you have to do is just aim it at something like the QR code. You don't even have to take a picture. The QR codes are built into the phone. And so you aim it at the QR code and the camera will read it, and then you just tap it and it goes to the website. So that's an advancement here that's been that Apple, I know, I'm not sure about Android, but I'm pretty sure that they have. But QR code readers are now built and coded into the cameras on cell phones and smartphones, so you can read it, can scan it and read it that way. And so what are QR codes used for? They're used to advertise any and everything. Businesses use them in various forms, business cards, to share information in office, inter office business communication, things of that nature. Healthcare. If everybody's been paying attention, the COVID vaccine can now be stored on your phone. And a lot of times like if you go to verify, instead of you having that card that is now being widely, what am I trying to say, mimicked, counterfeited is the word I'm looking for. Now the QR codes are coming out where you can store your COVID vaccine card on your cell phone, smartphone, tablet, whatever, and that can be used to scan to verify that you've been vaccinated. It's used in the education industry. I mean, there are so many ways. Automotive industry, of course, technological industry, computers, whatever. The QR codes are one of those things that have hit the scene and have gone and blown up, as they call it, and it's used, it's effective. When something is effective and it's easy to use, everybody wants to use it. And so you can find QR codes everywhere. And I'm sure you've seen them now that you know what they are. If you didn't already know what they are, you've seen them there. You can see them on flyers. You see them in the grocery store. You see them on different products. I have a t-shirt with it on it that advertises my basketball program. You can see them on social media websites and apps. They can be found anywhere, because a lot of times they're used for advertising purposes. And so when you start talking about with the QR code, how do we use the QR code? Well, for most often they're free. There are so many QR code generators on the internet, it's not even funny. And we'll talk about that in a second. But you have two different types of QR codes. You have what they call static QR codes, which are free. They cannot be updated and they cannot track data, because that's basically the difference between the static and the dynamic. The QR code, the static QR code is the one that we normally see. That's the one where you go to a QR code generator website, you want it to point to something. So you have to have the URL or the file name of whatever. You input that in, put the name in, uh, click generate, and it creates you a code. Cannot be updated, cannot be redone. If you mess it up, you have to completely start over, you know. But then the second one is what's called the dynamic QR code. And this who scanned it, you know, it just depends on how deep you want that data to be. But those are not free. The dynamic ones are not free. You have to have a paid subscription to a QR website to use those, and they can be updated. Instead of you having to have a new QR code every time you do something, you just take your that primary QR code and you just update it as needed. Like I said, that one is not free, but the static one is. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like a brand name, you know. A QR code, they do look different, you know. They're like barcodes. There are little intricacies in them that are different from everything else. And so a lot of times people or companies are getting the dynamic QR codes because they don't want to continue to change their QR code. It's just like anything else. They want to have that same code, but they want to be able to use it where it directs to different things over time as they need it to. So some people will now start paying for the dynamic QR code, but most often most people are going to use the one that's free. It can, you know, you can go in there, you can create as many as you need to do as many as you want. A static QR code being used because it's just the most efficient and simplest one out there. And so what can you QR codes be used for? They can be used to link, like I said, to a link, a URL. Remember, a link, just a website or something like that. They can be used to be directed to a YouTube video, a Google video, something like that. You can scan them. Different social media apps now use them where if you scan it, it opens up their app. Um, you can open it up like if you want to send their email, basically email QR codes where you scan one and it opens up an email to be able to send. Um, there are QR codes for files. You know, some companies use them where instead of emailing a file to somebody, the file now has a QR code attached to it. So instead of sharing the file, you can share the code. And a lot of times that's going to be a dynamic QR code. And like I said, it's tracking who it's been shared to, how many times it's been shared, how many times the file's been opened, you know, just things of that nature. And so then you have QR code business cards, which I see a lot of people sharing now. You know, they don't get the business cards printed anymore. They go into a QR code generator that creates a business card. They store that on their phone as a pic or something like that. And then they share that by allowing people to scan their QR code from their phone. And then it's just one of those things, you know, when you start talking about there are QR code generators all over the, you know, all over the internet. You know, there are so many of them. You know, I don't even want to get into the number, but there are a lot of them. I've used different ones for my basketball program a lot of times. So when you start talking about a free QR code generator, um, there are things that you need to look for. Number one, the credibility of the website. Just like everything else, you want to make sure that the website that you're using is credible. Okay. So start, you know, when you go through the website, they're going to brag about who's using their QR code generator. So you'll look through the website, scan around, you know, research the website and say, hey, you know, this company is using this. They use it to generate something, or this brand uses it to generate their QR code. So you want to look throughout the website and make sure that it's credible. You also want to make sure that what it's doing is clear. You know, as with anything, clarity is number one. You want to make sure that what you're doing and where it's going to lead to, the instructions are clear. You know, the end point, the landing point, that's what you want that code to do. The landing point, the clarity of that landing point is it's what's clear. You also want to make sure that it's well trusted. You know, once again, that's about going through looking to see who's used it. Because like I said, when somebody is using a product, if a big name brand is using somebody's product, they are going to advertise that all over their website because it brings in more traffic, brings in more business, brings in more profits, you know. And so being trustworthy and credible, those things kind of go hand in hand. So like I said, before you start just using any random QR code generator website, go through, check it, make sure that you can see that they are credible. And if they're not, they may not be. And if they're not, you don't want to use them. You don't want to even waste the time, because once again, you have those things like, the different types of scams that go on. Everything unfortunately can be used for a scam. So make sure that when you are using these static QR code generated websites, that you go through and make sure that the website itself is trustworthy, that they haven't embedded something in their QR code, some type of malware, some type of ransomware or something like that, where when you share your code, it's not inputting that malware, that ransomware, that virus or whatnot all over whoever you're sharing it with their computers, their smartphones, their tablets, their laptops, and things of that nature. So always make sure that, just like anything else, when you are using these websites, a lot of times you don't even have to create an account. Some you can, just because practical purposes, but a lot of them you don't even have to create an account. You just go in, put your information in, generate your QR code, and you keep it going. But for the ones that do allow you to create an account, like the dynamic ones where you're having to pay for a subscription, just go through and for either one, make sure that the website is credible, it's trustworthy, and it's there's clarity in the instructions on what their QR code generator is doing. Okay. So with that, that is all that I have today, you guys. I know it's just short, it's sweet, and like I said, for whatever reason, Facebook Live and myself are not getting along really well these last couple of months. And so I don't want to do a super long presentation. I could have dragged this thing out for an hour, but I don't want to do that because I don't want it to stop and just completely just shut off in the middle of my program. So my presentation. So with that being said, I hope that I provided you guys with some information on what QR codes are, what it stands for, quick response code, it's a credible website, trustworthy website, and all of their instructions and everything on it is clear for clarity's sake, so that you're not also installing some type of ransomware or malware or a virus or things of that nature. Okay, so I want everybody to have a good week. Next week, let's see what I am discussing next week. Yeah, I know I keep this stuff saved because I have to remind myself, what are we discussing, Bree? Let me find my picture. We are in November. Oh, we're already done. It's November 23rd. I don't have another one scheduled for this month. So my next one will be coming in December, on December 1st, and it's about IoT devices. Okay. So with that being said, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I will not see you. Well, actually, I will see you all next week because November 29th is Monday. Okay. So 30th. Yeah. Okay. So December 1st is when you guys will see me. But I want everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving, be grateful, get up and just think about what you are grateful for. We are all living in this pandemic, and that's one of the best things that we should be grateful for. We pray for each other and everything, but I pray that everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope that you guys hope that I have a wonderful Thanksgiving, have some good food, whether it's traditional, non-traditional, be grateful for your family, love on your family, and just I hope that I get to see you all again 365 days from now, having another and saying happy Thanksgiving for 2022. So with that being said, everybody have a good evening or a good day, and I will see you all. Bye-bye.